The former president's comeback will be complete with a win in Wisconsin, a state that he narrowly lost 4 years ago. He is now the second president in U.S. history.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into one of the most controversial figures in modern politics, Donald Trump. Whether you love him or hate him, there's no denying Trump has a way of sparking intense emotions across the board.
You said, I guess you know I love you.
I know.
Did I?
But I don't want to put you in that spot. But.
No, I'm standing in that spot. I love this guy right here. Let me give this guy a hug right here. I love this guy right here.
For some people, Trump is seen as a bold leader who isn't afraid to speak his mind and challenge the status quo. Others see him as a divisive force whose statements and policies harm the country more than help it. So, why does he inspire such strong feelings on both sides? This is a complex topic, and we'll take a close look at the factors that contribute to both the passionate love and intense dislike Trump generates. Stick around as we explore why Trump is so polarizing and how he's shaped public opinion like few leaders before him. Why some people hate Trump. Number 1. Trump's blunt and controversial statements. One of the top reasons people dislike Donald Trump is his reputation for making blunt, often controversial statements. Trump is known for speaking his mind without filters, which is a trait some appreciate but others find deeply offensive. He has made remarks over the years that have been criticized for being divisive, inflammatory, and at times even harmful. Trump's statements on immigrants, particularly his comments about Mexican immigrants during his initial campaign, stirred a lot of negative attention. He also made headlines for his comments about certain women, critics, and racial groups, which critics see as perpetuating negative stereotypes or creating division among Americans. For instance, he once referred to certain African nations as Eshe-Thol countries, a comment widely viewed as inappropriate and offensive. These statements have not only sparked outrage but have left a lasting impression on many people's perception of Trump. Critics argue that his unfiltered comments contribute to a culture of hostility and intolerance, making certain groups feel unwelcome or alienated. They believe a leader should promote unity, not fuel division, and that Trump's remarks have done the opposite. Number 2. Policies that some view as unfair. Another reason for Trump's unpopularity is his policy approach, especially in areas like immigration, taxation, and the environment. Trump's administration was known for implementing strict immigration measures, like constructing a border wall between the U.S. and Mexico, enforcing stricter deportation rules, and attempting to limit immigration from certain countries. Supporters saw these measures as essential steps to secure the country, but critics believed they were discriminatory and harmful to immigrant communities. They argue that these policies fostered a negative view of immigrants and turned America away from its values of diversity and acceptance. Furthermore, Trump's tax cuts, which aimed to stimulate the economy, were seen by some as disproportionately benefiting the wealthy. While these policies were supposed to encourage business growth, opponents argue they deepened inequality and ignored the needs of working families. Number 3. Handling of national crises. Trump's handling of national crises, particularly the COVID-19 pandemic, is another point of contention. Many felt that Trump's response was slow and inconsistent, contributing to a greater impact of the virus in the United States. Critics argue that Trump downplayed the severity of COVID-19 at first, delayed critical actions, and often contradicted public health experts, which they believe worsened the public health crisis. Critics feel that Trump's approach to COVID-19 lacked empathy and responsibility. They argue he seemed more focused on his image and popularity than on taking decisive steps to protect the American people. His handling of other national issues, such as protests against racial injustice, has also been controversial. Many believe he missed opportunities to address issues constructively, often choosing rhetoric that appeared to intensify divisions instead of seeking common ground. Why some people love Trump. Number 1. Seen as an anti-establishment leader. For many of Trump's supporters, he's a breath of fresh air in a political world that they feel has become corrupt and overly bureaucratic. Trump's reputation as an outsider who isn't a typical politician made him appealing to people who are frustrated with the so-called establishment. He presents himself as someone who speaks his mind, rejects political correctness, and isn't afraid to challenge the traditional norms. When Trump talks about draining the swamp, he's talking about removing what he sees as corruption and influence peddling in Washington. Many Americans are frustrated with politicians they feel are out of touch with the public's needs. Trump's promise to address this frustration and change the system appeals to those who feel their voices aren't being heard by mainstream politicians. For supporters, his brash style and outsider status make him a leader who's genuinely interested in shaking things up. Number 2. Pro-business and economic growth policies. Trump's background as a businessman greatly influenced his approach to economic policy. He focused on economic growth, job creation, and tax cuts, which resonated with people who prioritize a strong economy. Supporters often point to the stock market's performance and the low unemployment rates during much of his term as proof that his economic policies were successful. Trump's tax reforms aim to reduce regulations and stimulate investment, which many of his supporters see as beneficial for business growth. While some argue these measures disproportionately benefited the wealthy, others believe his policies helped boost economic confidence and created more opportunities for Americans. Trump's supporters often feel that his approach to the economy allowed for greater financial freedom and fewer constraints on businesses, which they argue benefits everyone in the long run. Number 3. Stance on law and order. Trump's emphasis on law and order has won him support from those who prioritize security and stability.
My message to Minnesota is clear. I'm here to help you. We will bring back law and order to your community. We will bring it back, and we'll bring it back immediately.
His strong rhetoric on crime and social unrest resonated with people who felt that the country needed stricter enforcement to keep communities safe. His administration's stance on policing and responses to protests gave many Americans a sense of reassurance that law and order would be maintained. Trump's supporters believe his focus on law and order reflects a dedication to preserving American values and protecting communities. They argue that, by backing law enforcement and condemning violent protests, Trump was standing up for people who feel unsafe amid social unrest. For these supporters, Trump's approach to law and order isn't just about crime, it's about defending their way of life. Understanding the divide. Number 1. The media's role in Trump's image. The media has played a major role in shaping public opinion about Donald Trump. Many mainstream news outlets have been critical of Trump, often focusing on his most controversial statements and actions. This has led to a perception among his supporters that the media is biased against him, portraying him in a negative light while ignoring his achievements. Trump's supporters argue that he's been unfairly targeted by the media, which they believe is politically biased. In their view, the media's focus on his flaws and missteps overshadows his accomplishments, creating an unbalanced narrative. On the other hand, Trump's critics feel that media coverage holds him accountable and provides a necessary check on his actions. This back and forth has only deepened the divide, with people on each side relying on different sources of information to reinforce their views. Number 2. Social media and Trump's communication style. Trump's use of social media, especially Twitter, became one of the defining features of his presidency. He often used social media to communicate directly with the public, which supporters appreciated as a way to bypass traditional media filters. However, his frequent, unfiltered posts also sparked criticism, as his messages were often seen as inflammatory or unpresidential. For Trump's supporters, his direct approach on social media made him feel accessible and relatable. They felt that he was speaking to them directly and honestly, which they valued. Critics, however, viewed his social media activity as reckless and unprofessional, arguing that a president should be more restrained and thoughtful in their public statements. Number 3. Cultural and generational differences. The division around Trump is also influenced by cultural and generational factors. Trump's conservative views appeal to some groups while alienating others. Older generations and rural communities often resonate more with his traditional stance on issues like immigration, patriotism, and family values. In contrast, younger, more progressive voters tend to oppose his views on social issues, viewing them as outdated or narrow-minded. Trump's presidency highlighted a larger cultural shift in America, where different generations have different views on key issues. His supporters see him as a defender of traditional values, while his critics see him as a hindrance to social progress. This cultural clash is a major factor in the strong opinions that surround him. Regardless of where people stand on Trump, his legacy is set to be one of the most controversial in modern American history. Supporters view him as a bold leader who challenged the status quo and delivered on his promises, while critics see him as a divisive figure whose actions deepened national divides. His presidency has left a mark on American politics and will likely influence the political landscape for years to come. And that's a wrap on today's exploration of why people feel so strongly about Donald Trump, both the love and the hate. Whether you agree with him or not, Trump has undoubtedly shaped conversations, polarized opinions, and brought out passionate responses from people across the country.